It was a Tuesday morning in October, and I remember thinking it was going to be a good week. I'd just gotten a commendation from my department head. My daughter had texted me the night before to say she'd aced her midterms, and my wife had made my favorite breakfast, scrambled eggs with sharp cheddar and sourdough toast, before I headed out the door. She even kissed me on the cheek, which she hadn't done in a while. By 10 a.m., I was in the men's restroom at the county assessor's office where I'd worked for 11 years, bent over in pain that had no business being there. It started as a dull ache I'd written off as muscle soreness. Then it became something sharper, something wrong. I don't embarrass easily, but the sound I made in that stall embarrassed me. My supervisor knocked on the door and asked if I needed to go home. I told him I just needed a minute. He told me to take the day. I drove myself to an urgent care clinic on Ridgeline Avenue rather than wait 3 days for my regular doctor. The nurse who processed me had a look on her face I couldn't read. Not unkind, exactly. More like she'd seen this before and already felt sorry for me. The doctor who came in was young, maybe 35, with wire-rimmed glasses, and the kind of calm voice you either find reassuring or unsettling depending on your state of mind. That day, it was unsettling. He told me what I had. I asked him to repeat it. He did. Chlamydia, he said. He explained it like he was reading from a script, clearly because he had to do this a lot and had learned that plain language was the kindest approach. He asked about recent sexual partners. I told him my wife was the only person I'd been with in 22 years. He didn't say anything for a moment. Then he said she needed to get tested as soon as possible. I sat in my car in the parking lot for a long time after that. Long enough that a woman walked past twice, glanced at me both times, and then looked away. I don't know what my face looked like. I just know I didn't turn the key. My wife is a school librarian. She's been one since before we got married. She loves it, the organizing, the recommending books to kids, the little reading clubs she runs on Wednesday afternoons. I'd always been proud of that. People ask what she does and I'd say she's a librarian, and they'd smile, and I would too. Something about it felt like it said something good about her. I thought about that in the parking lot. About the person I thought I'd married. Then I drove to my older brother's house. He lives about 12 minutes from the clinic, which is the only reason I went there first. I didn't have a plan. I just needed someone who knew me before I became a husband and a father. Someone who would tell me the truth about what I should do next. He was home. He works as a contractor and had finished a job early. He took one look at me when I came through the door and handed me a cup of coffee without asking. We sat at his kitchen table and I told him. He didn't interrupt. When I finished, he was quiet for a while. He said, "Do you think it's the first time?" I said I didn't know. He said, "You need a lawyer before you say anything to her." He wasn't wrong. My brother has been divorced himself. Not because of anything like this, just a marriage that ran out of road, and he knew things I didn't. He pulled out his phone, looked up a name, and told me to call her that afternoon. Her name was Patricia Wend. She'd been recommended to him by someone at his church. When I called, her paralegal fit me in for a 2 o'clock appointment that same day, which told me they were used to situations with some urgency. Patricia's office was in a low-rise building near the county courthouse. The kind of place that looks like it's been there since 1987 and will be there in 2050. She was a compact woman in her 50s with short silver hair and reading glasses she kept taking on and off. She listened to me without writing anything down for the first several minutes. Then she picked up her pen and started. She asked about joint assets. The house, which was in both our names, bought 14 years ago. 2 vehicles. A joint savings account. And then she asked whether my wife had any separate accounts that I knew of. I told her I wasn't sure. I handled the main household accounts. My wife had her own checking account for what she called personal spending, which I had never questioned because I had no reason to. Patricia said that was something worth looking at. She also recommended that before I said anything to my wife, anything at all, I should speak to a private investigator she worked with regularly, not because of the financial picture necessarily, but because if this had been going on for any length of time, documentation would matter. I asked her how long something like this could go on without a person knowing. She looked at me over her glasses and said, "Longer than most people think." I authorized the investigator that afternoon. His name was Kendrick, and he was methodical in a way that made me feel both reassured and slightly sick. He took a photo of my wife that I pulled up on my phone, the make and model of her car, her work schedule, and the general pattern of her evenings. My wife stayed late on Tuesdays and Thursdays, she said, for library programming. Sometimes Fridays too. He said he'd be in touch. I drove home and made dinner. Baked chicken and roasted potatoes and a salad I barely touched. My wife came home at 6:48. She hung up her coat, washed her hands, and asked how my day was. I said it was fine. A little rough, but fine. She said, "You look tired." I said, "Long day." She heated up a plate and sat across from me and told me about a student who'd checked out every single book in a mystery series and was going to have to wait 2 weeks for the final one to come in because another student had it. She was annoyed on behalf of the first student. She talked about it like it was the most important thing that had happened that day. I watched her and thought, I don't know you at all. 2 days later, Kendrick called. He had already found something. He kept his voice neutral when he explained it, which I appreciated. He said my wife had met with the same individual on both Tuesday and Thursday evenings at an apartment complex on the west side of town. He had photographs. He said the individual appeared to be a man in his mid-40s, drove a silver SUV, and appeared to be a regular presence at that location. He asked if I wanted him to continue. I said yes. By the end of that week, he had confirmed the pattern extended back at least 6 weeks, which was as far back as his surveillance could establish. He said it was likely longer than that. Patricia filed the preliminary memo of the evidence with her office notes. She told me this would help establish the timeline if we went to court. Then she asked me the same question my brother had asked. "Do you think it's the first time?" I said I still didn't know. But I was starting to have a feeling. That weekend, my wife went to what she called a regional librarians conference in Harrisburg. She'd mentioned it 2 weeks earlier, and I hadn't thought twice about it. This time I asked if she'd sent me the hotel information. She said yes, it was in an email for last week. I looked. There was no email. She said she must have forgotten to send it and gave me the hotel name verbally. I wrote it down. While she was loading her bag into the car, I called the hotel. There was no conference booked there that weekend. There was no record of a reservation under her name. She was gone for 2 nights. I spent those nights going through things I had never gone through. Not her personal phone, she had it with her, but her laptop, which she sometimes left at home. I found a browser history she hadn't fully cleared and a second email account I didn't know existed. The emails there went back further than 6 weeks. Much further. I found the first one dated 3 years ago. Just a short message, nothing explicit, but familiar in a way that made my stomach drop. The way you write to someone you already know well. The thread continued. I didn't read all of it. I read enough. I called Patricia on Monday morning and told her what I'd found. She told me to forward it to her encrypted legal email and not to touch anything else on the laptop. She said the email history would be significant. She also told me that given the duration, I should get a full financial picture before I said a word to my wife. She connected me with a forensic accountant who specialized in marital asset cases. His name was Stuart, but he wasn't on any of my prior videos. This was a different Stuart entirely from the accounting firm, and within 4 days he had traced a pattern of withdrawals from our joint account over a period of 31 months. Small amounts, never more than $300 at a time, moved into an account connected to an email address I didn't recognize. When he showed me the total, I had to set the paper down. It was just under $60,000. I don't come from money. My father was a mail carrier. My mother cleaned offices at night while she put herself through community college. $60,000 is not abstract to me. That's years of my life. I called my brother that night and told him. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then he said, she was building a runway. That's the word I keep coming back to, a runway. Like she had been planning to take off for a long time, just waiting for the right moment to accelerate. I thought about our daughter. She's 26, lives about 40 minutes away, works as a physical therapist. She and her mother are close in the way a lot of daughters are with their mothers. They text constantly, they have inside jokes, they watch the same reality shows. I had no idea how to tell her any of this. I wasn't even sure I should. I called her one evening and just asked how she was doing. She talked for half an hour and I listened. And when we hung up, I sat in my car in the driveway for 20 minutes before I went inside. My wife was in the living room watching something on her tablet with earphones in. She looked up when I came in and smiled at me and went back to her show. I went to bed and lay there staring at the ceiling until 2 in the morning. Patricia had drafted the divorce papers. Kendrick had provided his full documentation package, photographs, dates, locations, a written summary. The financial accountant had prepared a complete report. Everything was ready. We had agreed that I should say nothing until we served the papers. That was the plan. One clean, controlled moment. What actually happened was different. I came home from work on a Thursday, a day she was supposedly staying late for her reading club, and she was already there. She was in the kitchen. She had made soup, which she almost never did. The whole house smelled like it. She said the programming had been canceled. She said she'd come home early to surprise me. I stood in the doorway of the kitchen and looked at her stirring that pot, and something just broke loose in me. Not anger, exactly. Something older than anger. Something that had been sitting under my ribs for weeks. I said, I know. She turned around. I said, I know about the apartment on the west side. I know about the email account. I know about the $60,000. She set the spoon down. The silence in that kitchen was the longest silence I have ever sat in. She didn't deny it. That surprised me. I had expected denial. Instead, she sat down at the kitchen table and put her face in her hands. She said, How long have you known? I said, Long enough. She started to cry. I watched her and didn't move. She said she was sorry. She said it happened slowly, that it wasn't what I thought, that she had never wanted to hurt me. I had heard that there were things you could say in a moment like that, which would feel like weapons, and things you could say that would feel like grief. I tried for grief. I said, You were planning to leave. You were doing it quietly, a little at a time, so I wouldn't see it coming. She didn't say anything. I said, I saw it coming. I slept at my brother's house that night. He didn't ask many questions. He made up the couch with the good blanket and put a glass of water on the side table and said goodnight. That was enough. Patricia served the papers 2 days later. My wife's attorney, one she'd apparently hired within 48 hours of our conversation, which told me something too, reviewed everything and called Patricia to say her client was open to discussion. Patricia said we weren't. The forensic report went into evidence. The email history went in. Kendrick's documentation went in. Everything was clean and organized and exactly as devastating as it needed to be. The hearing was in March. It didn't take long. The court awarded me the house. The account she'd been building, the $60,000, was recovered in full as marital assets. Her attorney argued it was personal savings. The judge looked at the structure of the withdrawals, looked at the hidden account, and was unpersuaded. My wife did not fight the outcome the way I expected her to. Maybe she was tired. Maybe she knew the evidence made it hopeless. I don't know what goes on in her mind anymore. Maybe I never did. Our daughter took it hard, not the divorce itself. By the time I told her the full story, she was angrier at her mother than I was. What she struggled with was the idea that the version of her family she'd grown up believing in had never quite been real. I told her that some of it was, the dinners and the holidays in her childhood. I was there for all of it, and I meant all of it. That part was real. She came over one Sunday and we made breakfast together, eggs and sourdough, which I realized afterward was what I'd been eating the morning this whole thing started. She didn't comment on it. She just stayed for most of the afternoon and we watched football and talked about things that had nothing to do with any of this, which was exactly what I needed. My wife moved into an apartment near her mother's neighborhood. I don't know much about her life now. The girls at her school apparently know she went through a personal situation. That's what I heard from someone at my daughter's gym who'd heard it secondhand. I didn't pursue it further. What I do know is that my house is quiet in a way that took getting used to. Some evenings I sit at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and I think about what 22 years actually means. I gave her the best of those years. I showed up every single day. I'm not asking for credit. I'm saying it because it's true, and because for a long time I felt like the truth of it had been erased. Like she had rewritten the whole history of our marriage in her head until I was nothing but a placeholder. Someone keeping the lights on until she was ready to go. She was wrong about that. I know who I am. I know what I gave. My brother came over for dinner last month and brought his girlfriend, who I hadn't met yet. She's funny and quick, and she made my brother laugh in a way I hadn't heard him laugh in a while. When they left, I stood at the front door and watched them drive away, and I thought, it's possible. It's still possible. I'm not in a hurry. I've got my daughter and my work and a house that's mine, and mornings where I make coffee and read the news and don't have to wonder what's true. That's more than I had 6 months ago, and some days it's enough.